I studied the 50 most iconic Hollywood dresses of all time to try and determine what makes a dress truly iconic. Now, you might think it's how beautiful the dress is or how successful the film is, but it's actually more complicated than that. Let me show you what I mean. Have you seen this dress before? Now, have you seen this dress before? Congrats to you if you're familiar with both, but 99% of people only know the first dress. Even though both of those dresses come from the biggest movies in 1955, they were both box office hits, and even the second one won the Oscar for Best Costume Design. Yet, most people only know the first. Why is that? It's not that there's anything wrong with the second, it's just that the first has become iconic. So I decided to find out why some dresses are iconic and some equally beautiful dresses are kind of forgettable, and I came up with 7 key things. To do this, I started by establishing the list of the 50 most iconic dresses I could think of. This is just what I came up with, so let me know in the comments if I forgot any important dresses that you think should be included in this list. While there is a subjective element to what makes a dress iconic, I do think it's way less subjective than the word beautiful. To take the same example from before, not everyone's going to agree on which dress is the prettiest, but everyone will agree that the Marilyn one is more iconic. You may also think that when a star wears a dress, it automatically becomes iconic. But let me ask you, out of these 3 dresses, do you know all of them? Like, they're all worn by Marilyn, but usually only the white one is the well-known one. Also, I focused on dresses rather than costumes because dresses are usually worn in key climactic scenes like balls and parties. I selected these dresses based on how memorable and influential they are, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with dresses that aren't iconic. For example, the movie What a Way to Go has dozens of amazing dresses, but they all appear super briefly, and so none of them really stands out as iconic. And this works fine with the film because it's a story about being lost in the excess of money and wealth. It would also be super interesting to cover iconic costumes that aren't dresses, like the yellow skirt suit from Clueless, Charlie Chaplin's outfit, James Dean's outfit. Let me know if you'd like me to cover those topics in the comments. Now let's begin looking at the reasons why some of these dresses go down in history and some are just forgotten. The first reason is that some of these dresses are just perfect for a specific scene or performance. Ginger Rogers' dress in the cheek-to-cheek number from Top Hat is her most famous dress, even though Fred Astaire and pretty much everybody involved in the film hated it and wanted a different design. Thankfully for us, Ginger was super determined and decided to use it. She designed it herself, and as a dancer she understood exactly what was needed for that specific dance number. Many of her dresses are meant to show off her dancing by having flowing fabrics around the arms and legs to show off movement, but being tight around the middle of the body to create contrast. Her other costumes had already done this with frills and ruffles, but Ginger decided to take it a step further and to incorporate the most glamorous addition to a costume possible: feathers. Now this was super impractical, but somehow that makes the dress even more perfect for the number. Versus simpler gowns like the one from Never Gonna Dance or Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which are gorgeous, but just not quite as iconic. The dress also shows the place that Ginger is in at this point in the story. She's dancing with Fred Astaire, a man who she's in love with, but she thinks she can't be with because he's married to her best friend. The front of the dress shows the idea that she can't be with him because it's very modest and has a high neck, so the feathers are kind of protecting her and her heart. Whereas the back is very open, which, shows the sexual tension of the scene. So it's really a completely perfect dress for the number, and I'm so happy that Ginger won with her intuition on this one. Now that brings us to the second reason why some dresses just leave their mark on cinema history, and that's when they say something about the character. Let's talk about the green velvet dress from Gone with the Wind. Obviously, the dress is gorgeous, and Vivien Leigh just looks pretty amazing in green, but that's not the only reason why it's so unforgettable today. If you haven't seen the movie, Scarlett O'Hara is a rich Southern belle who becomes poor during the Civil War, and in this scene she has to pretend to be rich in the hopes of getting Red Butler to help her out. She doesn't have any fancy clothes anymore, so she decides to make a dress out of the green velvet curtains of her family house. So basically what the dress does is show us exactly what kind of person she is. It shows us that she's a liar because she's using the dress as a costume to pretend to be something she's not. It shows us that she's willing to sacrifice anything to get what she wants, even at the detriment of the rest of her family. And lastly, it shows us that she is obsessed with her family home because she's literally wearing its curtains. And this is why Scarlett does all the crazy things she does, including, stealing the boyfriend of her sister and so many more things. It's because of her family home. So this dress really helps us get to the heart of the character, and that makes it a really incredible, iconic costume. While there is for sure a psychological aspect to why some dresses become unforgettable, there's also a visual component that we cannot overlook. The third reason why some dresses become classics is that they're somehow visually unique. We can see this especially through the use of colour. For example, Keira Knightley's green dress in Atonement is iconic in part because it's green, which is a rather unusual colour, and moreover it's a rather unusual shade of green, which makes it very unique. If you look at the yellow dress from How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, this actually breaks a pretty common fashion rule that states that blondes shouldn't wear yellow. Same thing goes for the Nicole Kidman dress in Moulin Rouge, which goes against the common idea that redheads shouldn't wear red. All this contributes to giving these gowns a really strong visual identity. But there's something else that really gives these dresses a trademark identity. Have a look at these 14 dresses and tell me what you think they all have in common. If you've guessed that they all have matching accessories, you're right. This draws even more attention to the dress itself. Out of the 50 dresses I've selected, 14 of them have some sort of matching accessory like gloves, a shawl, or a hair accessory. This really makes the dress stand out, especially if it's worn during a key scene from the movie and if the rest of the clothes aren't particularly memorable. In fact, in this case, the dress is visually unique and the contrast between the dress and the rest of the costumes is more important than the dress itself. The fourth thing that makes a dress iconic also relies on contrast. This time on the contrast between current trends and the dress. Some of the most memorable dresses are either fashion trailblazers that get copied time and time again, or they somehow manage to blend a trend with a more timeless or even an old-fashioned element. For example, the Barbarella mini dress is inspired from Paco Rabanne's metallic, futuristic creations. So this type of dress was still super experimental when the movie was made, and the movie actually kick-started even more interest in Rabanne's collections. So that's an example of a trailblazer outfit that marks a really important change in fashion. Even more iconic gowns manage to blend classic old-fashioned elements with those modern elements. For example, let's consider two of the most famous dresses ever made. In a way, these dresses are quite traditional. Black and pink are by no means rare colors. They're matching gloves, heavy jewelry. All these accessories gives a slight, 1900s vibe to the dresses and a very old-fashioned, old Hollywood glamorous feel. Yet, they both mix in contemporary trends to give the costumes that modern twist that we love. Marilyn's dress has a matching belt, which was a very big thing in the 50s and lasted until the 60s. So that was a really modern trend incorporated into an otherwise classic gown. Let's take a look at Audrey's dress. Now, do you see the difference between these two dresses? Exactly. The one from the poster, it's pretty classic and it's not very memorable. The one that Audrey actually wore is much more 60s. It has a high neckline and an interesting cutter detail at the back. Without those details, honestly, the dress would have been just another black evening gown. The sunglasses also add that modernity to the look. It just creates a really memorable scene in the memory of the viewers. By the way, if you're finding this video interesting, you might want to like and subscribe to let me know that I should continue making content like this. Now let's get back to the video. You're probably not going to like the fifth reason why some dresses are more iconic than others, and that reason is luck. Now, could a boring dress become iconic through luck? Absolutely not. But luck does still kind of play an interesting role in the equation. If you don't believe me, have a look at these two outfits. Which do you remember having seen before? I'm very willing to bet that it's this one, but actually both were meant to be in a song that ended up getting cut from the film, but somehow only the gold one got famous. It's actually crazy because the gold one is only in the movie for about 8 seconds, while the other is in the movie for about 30 seconds. And honestly, of the two, the most unusual one is probably the one with the roses. I wonder if it didn't inspire Saint Laurent's famous 1999 dress with the flowers, But anyway, the fact is that we remember the gold dress today and not the other one. Probably because of the photo shoot that was made of it, and possibly also the mystery of being cut from the movie, but once again, I think that luck has a role to play in this. It's the same reason why most people assume that Aurora wears pink in Sleeping Beauty. Actually, she wears blue for most of the film, but why do we remember it differently? For some reason, the gold dress and the pink dress just captured the public's imagination more than was expected, and that random element is also what makes those dresses so special. Let's move on to the sixth reason why some of these dresses are just more iconic than others. This point isn't so much about character psychology or even about the look of the dresses, it's more about curiosity. This happens when a dress beats some sort of record or when it's the first to do such and such a thing. For example, when a dress is deemed to be one of the most expensive dresses ever made, you can bet it's going to be iconic. This is what happened with these two dresses worn by Marlene Dietrich and Ginger Rogers. They probably wouldn't have been that famous if they hadn't been quite so expensive. Now, there's another type of curiosity which can be created not by publicity but by technical skill used in making the dress. Take the black Gilda dress and the pink Marilyn dress. Now, we may not be immediately able to put a finger on why they're so technically advanced today because we've made so much more progress, but at the time they were really quite unique. The main thing about them is that they're strapless. Now, there are two ways to hold up a strapless gown. One is to have, pretty tight fabric around the chest, which doesn't necessarily look the best and can be pretty uncomfortable for the wearer. These two actresses actually have to dance while they're wearing the number, so that's not the best option. The second option is to build a corset-like structure that holds itself up, but the problem with that is that it can usually look really stiff. Both these dresses are held up by a corset, but the stiffness is overcome in different ways. The Gilda dress has a soft mole of the chest sewn into it, which creates structure without stiffness, and the Marilyn dress has a hard base with soft silk draped and folded over the top as if it could hold by itself. In fact, when it's not on Marilyn, you can really see how stiff the dress actually is. Both creations are really clever and work their way around the strapless dress problem, which sparks curiosity because people at the time would not have been used to see that many strapless dresses that looked so natural and allow dancers to move around freely in them. Now let's have a look at the last and arguably the most important thing that makes dresses unforgettable. We've spoken about what dresses say about the character. But arguably, what's even more important is what the dresses say about the movie. In fact, what makes a costume truly great is how well it understands the story that it's helping to tell. Let's go back to the white dress that Marilyn wore at the beginning of the video. On the surface, this dress doesn't have anything particularly remarkable about it, and that's just the point. The whole movie is told from the point of view of this boring, middle-aged guy named Richard who keeps fantasizing about being loved by beautiful women. He meets and befriends his neighbor, played by Marilyn, and they appear to have some sort of love affair over the summer. It's not really clear, just watch the movie. Now, Marilyn wears different outfits in this movie. For example, she wears a really interesting red outfit when she does a commercial on TV at one point. He also fantasizes about her wearing like this animal print crazy dress with black sequin gloves. And those outfits represent the fantasy world that the main character is living in. But the white dress is just a simple summer dress. That's probably exactly the kind of thing a young model would have worn in a hot summer in New York. The famous thing about the dress is when the wind from the subway blows the dress up to show Marilyn's legs. Now, this wasn't the first time this happened on screen, and it certainly wasn't the last, but it's the time that it had the most meaning. In this film, the dress represents reality, the world that he's actually living in, and the breeze that lifts up the dress represents the fantasy world that he's created for himself. In fact, the dress summarizes the contrast between reality and dreams, which is basically the contrast that the entire movie revolves around. And the fact that Marilyn has nice legs probably doesn't hurt either, but that, guys, is beside the point. So there you have it. For a dress to truly stand the test of time, it needs to perfectly complement a scene or a performance. It needs to say something about the character, to have a strong visual identity, to blend timelessness with current trends, spark curiosity, and/or be a metaphor for the entire movie. If you'd like to learn more about old Hollywood costumes, check out this video I did about Audrey Hepburn's style and what we can learn from it today. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.